At least 400,000 Cambodians have suffered land disputes since 2003, based on records by local human rights group LICADHO. Last year, another 11,000 families were affected. In the name of national development, the government has cracked down on those who fight back.
We have to get away a slum area. We don't want like a rubbish place right in the middle of the city.
Does all that justify sending in security forces to violently crack down on people?
But want the people again with the government, what can you do?
Cambodia's journey towards development has a casualty count that keeps rising. Every year, tens of thousands of people are forced from their homes to make way for high-end residential and commercial projects. Despite international pressure, recent evictions have become even more brutal. I'm Chan Tao Cho. In this edition of 101 East, we look at those left behind and ask, is Cambodia's trail of development also a trail of destruction? Four years ago, I came to Cambodia to investigate stories of land grabs and forced evictions. I visited Bung Kak Lake, home to an impoverished community in the capital Phnom Penh. I met vegetable seller Sok Kim and her husband, residents here for 20 years.
I'm really worried about eviction. Here, I grow and sell morning glory. If I have to go, I wouldn't know where to go and what to do.
Soon after, Sok Kim's family was evicted. For the government, this area formed 90 hectares of prime real estate in the heart of the city. It granted local company Shukaku a 99-year lease to develop the area. Shukaku belongs to a senator of the ruling Cambodian People's Party. Financed by Chinese investors, the company filled up the lake. Those living in homes on stilts above the water were ineligible for compensation. Today, Sok Kim is nowhere to be found. Fearing the worst, most of the households around the lake accepted compensation to leave. Over 4,000 families once lived here. Today, fewer than 800 remain, including the family of Phun Tut.
Those who left earlier were forced to accept $8,500. They suffered a lot. They couldn't afford to buy a house anywhere nearby. The houses built for compensation are not acceptable. They are so remote. I need a school for my grandchildren and a hospital for myself.
In response to how the government handled the situation, the World Bank froze much-needed funding for Cambodia last year. Soon after, Prime Minister Hun Sen promised the remaining few hundred families land titles within 2 areas around here. But some 90 families were shocked to discover they were left out. And without strength in numbers today, the continuing struggle to keep a roof over their heads seems increasingly futile. The land parcels promised to the remaining families add up to 12.44 hectares in the Bung Kak area, yet to be clearly marked out. But excavators came last September and destroyed 8 existing homes. troops beat up those who got in the way. Residents say it was hopeless to resist.
The security forces were here, about 500 of them with 2 excavators. They said they were building a sewage system. People begged them not to. From 12 noon to 1:40 p.m, everyone begged. They didn't build any sewage. They destroyed our homes.
Sok Tong Heng's wife, Heng Mam, was among those whose pleas fell on deaf ears. He remains defiant and has rebuilt a part of his house. Speaking to us with his daughter Shrelyak, he says his family has a right to live here.
In the Prime Minister's sub-decree, the 12 hectares of land is for the people of Bung Kak. That's me. I haven't left Bung Kak. They authorized the city office to allocate this land, but some officials are corrupt. They want to make money from our land. Why do I say that? The sub-decree was meant for all residents, but names of non-residents have turned up in the list for land titles. I have no title, yet outsiders do. They claim they bought the land from the original residents, but these residents accepted their compensation of $8,500 and left, so there's no one to buy it from. Lao Meng Khin's name is there. He owns the company.
Senator Lao Meng Khin owns Shukaku, the developer of Bung Kak Lake. He and his wife's names appear more than 20 times in the list of land titles for the relocation area. Lao Meng Khin ignored our requests for an interview. The protests continued, and in May, 13 people were arrested in a demonstration trying to build a hut on land where people were evicted from. They were convicted of illegally occupying land and obstructing public officials. Tong Heng's wife was one of them. Their daughter joined many others to protest that the trial was unjust, concluded too swiftly and without defense lawyers.
I want justice for my mother and all the people arrested from Bung Kak. They did no wrong. They're protecting their homes. They didn't rob or steal.
Following continued protests, they were released after a month in jail. The government says families are not entitled to compensation if they are rental tenants or if they moved in recently. But Shrelyak's parents have lived in Bung Kak for 20 years, just like their neighbour Kim Vani. They have the documents to prove it. Based on a 2001 land law, any Cambodian who has lived peacefully on a plot of land for 5 years has a right to it. Yet they find themselves among the families excluded from land titles promised to Bung Kak residents.
Everyone has the same papers. Others have been granted the land title as promised by the Prime Minister, but not me. They're trying to break down the power of our people by giving land titles to some, but not others. That's what they're doing, but we're united.
That's why even though authorities gave Pen Tut's family a land title, her daughter was among those in jail for joining the recent protest.
We received our titles because the arrested neighbours were the ones protesting. So to be fair, we have to help them now.
I asked government spokesman Pai Sipan about the land dispute in Cambodia. Senator Lao Meng Khin's name appeared more than 20 times in the list of land title claims. How can that happen?
That's one I have no idea, because I heard as a rumor. We have to go to court to find out wrong or right.
The court proceedings haven't inspired confidence for these people.
We cannot let the people fight on the street. I said to go to court.
But you're letting the police fight them on the street.
Yeah, we just keep law and order. It's not fighting on that. We keep law and order.
A journey into Cambodia's past reveals the root of the problem. Between 1975 and 79, the Khmer Rouge regime forced many people into the countryside. Seeking an agrarian communist society, it destroyed all land records. An estimated 1.7 million people died from forced labor, executions, and starvation. When a Vietnamese invasion toppled the regime in 1979, people settled down wherever they could, rebuilding lives that ground to a halt under the Khmer Rouge. Land rights remained a distant notion. Today, with the wheels in motion to upgrade Cambodia's rail system, 1,000 families living beside railway tracks face relocation as well. We speak to an NGO working with a community living along an unused track in Phnom Penh.
What's going to happen is that any houses from the middle of the railway to 3.5 meters to both sides is going to be affected. They're going to have to demolish their house and move to the relocation site.
It's a small community here, about 70 families. 10 households have moved out, but not seen VIRAKs. He can't understand how the government works out compensation.
The government is taking up 3.5 meters from both sides of the track. That affects my house by 20 centimeters. For that 20 centimeters, they offered me $102. We don't accept this. If they want me to leave, compensate me for the whole house, and I'll take it. I'm not cutting up my house.
When people move to the relocation site, what our recent research has shown is that their living standards simply drop dramatically. A lot of the people have taken on massive debts to rebuild their homes and their lives at the site. They've taken loans from informal lenders at high interest rates. Now they can't pay those loans back.
The relocation site for the railway community is an hour's drive away. With amenities far from ready, it feels like a ghost town. We meet a woman called Lab. Her family moved here last September after accepting $600 compensation.
Others left, so I did too. I was scared when I saw how brutal they were in Bung Kak, destroying houses. I have many children and grandchildren, and I was afraid I might lose my house too.
Authorities assured her that relocated families would be taken care of for up to 6 months. But Lab was in for a shock.
They promised us water and electricity supply, but there was nothing, just an empty plot of land and a toilet. When lightning struck, we took cover in the toilet. It was so difficult. There was no water for drinking or washing. We drank water from the rice field. I borrowed $2,500 using our land title deed as collateral. I needed money to build this house and buy food. I had to raise the ground because it flooded and also pay for connecting the power and water supply. I bring home a couple of dollars a day. I walk a long way to beg for money and odd jobs in return for dried rice. The moneylenders keep chasing for payment and threaten to take everything. I'm begging our community leader to help. Please ask NGOs for help. We're about to suffer even more. I was evicted once, and now I'm about to lose my land again. There's no hope.
Many communities turn to NGOs when government policies let them down, such as in ANDOUNG village. In 2006, security forces rounded up 1,000 families from a community in Phnom Penh. Troops loaded people onto trucks and dumped them in ANDOUNG, 2 hours' drive from the city. They turned destitute overnight. When I was here in 2008, people still depended on NGOs for medical and food supplies. Children died of dengue fever. Parents begged me to adopt surviving ones. 4 years later, the government has yet to provide basic services here. Things haven't improved much There are a few more brick houses, but most people are still living in basic huts made out of tin sheets. Sanitation and hygiene conditions are still very poor. People are trying their best to survive, but this really is a community that's crying out not to be forgotten. Locals tell us there's a lot of frustration. Soon after we arrive, the father smashes a bottle on his son's head and runs away, leaving us to tend to him. After gathering enough money for fuel, neighbors rush him to the nearest hospital, an hour away by motorcycle.
It's because of poverty and hardship over a long time. Sometimes people get drunk, or a husband comes home to see his wife gambling. People just lose control over things like that.
Haikri makes $3 a day as a shoe shiner in Phnom Penh. He brings home less than half of that for his wife and 3 children after spending on food and fuel. When his 4-year-old son needed surgery for a serious infection, the family plunged into crisis.
I was very worried because there was no money. We needed to save up for food and fuel first. It took a while to save enough just to travel to the hospital and pay for meals during the stay. There wasn't much left in the end. Before that, my eldest child had dengue fever. I didn't even have 25 cents in my pocket. I had to borrow money, and when we finally raised enough to go to the hospital, the doctor said he would have died if we'd waited one more day.
In ANDOUNG, only those who lived in the community for more than 5 years before the eviction have land here. Mandari's family is one of many who don't, so they rent a floor space in one of the houses. Her husband, a construction worker, is seldom home because he works far away. She survives by selling vegetables, earning $2.50 a day and borrowing money from neighbors.
I wake up at 3 a.m. every day and can't sleep anymore because we have no money and we're hungry. I walk along the fields to see what I can find to sell at the market. If I don't do that, I'll have nothing. Everything you see here, I find them in the bushes, in the fields.
It's lunchtime. Mandari's family polish off rice and fish soup within minutes, all too quickly for a 2-year-old grandson.
All I want is for my children and grandchildren to have enough to eat. Nobody helps me. When food is distributed, some people get 10 kilos of rice. I don't. Some people are good at following aid workers around to ask for food. I'm not. Poor people get no justice, even if we complain. Rich people can get any help they want, but we're poor, we can't.
So the options available to them take them far away from the schools, from hospitals that they need, from job opportunities.
Well, the school everywhere in Cambodia.
Sanitation and hygiene conditions are terrible.
Well, if they accept it, we're going to build it. Those people, it's not accepted, the people illegally stay.
ANDOUNG there has been there for 6 years. I don't see much improvement.
Because they again the decision from the court. That's why I suggest
So the court is not fair if that's the decision of the court.
It's not fair. If you say it's not fair, why?
Looking at the situation in ANDOUNG now, that is what has panned out from a court decision. Do you think that's fair?
Well, those people living down there have to make lodge into the court, but he don't like that, the way they're living down there.
The court is the tool of the government. It never be independent. It's so corrupt, and been used by the government to intimidate.
Opposition Member of Parliament CHHAY says local land developers and the government have close links.
Nearly 100% of the big company in this country are associated with the very senior government official or their families. They're so powerful. No doubt that they will play the role as part of the ruling party and provide them certain financial support.
Local development company PUNG leased the land in a Phnom Penh neighbourhood called Borekela. As part of their contract, they agreed to build 10 blocks on a section of it to house the existing community. It seemed like a fair deal until the developers stopped at 8 blocks last year, saying it cost too much. It left 300 families without homes to move into. Then in January, troops descended in familiar fashion.
It was a violent eviction. You know, they put people in the truck, forced them to go in the truck, brought them to 40 kilometers in Phnom Penh, and dropped them like garbage.
Dr. Kek Pong is the president of human rights NGO LICADHO. It provides aid at the relocation site Phnom Penh, an eerie reminder of ANDOUng village.
There is no electricity for them, no water, no clean water, no school for the children, no market, no job, no medical care, nothing. So this is a fair compensation. And most of men didn't go to that place. They stay in the city because they would like to keep their former job. So women and children suffer twice. One time because of the eviction, the second time the breaking of the family.
About 100 families who escaped relocation demand that the remaining 2 blocks be built. But with their homes destroyed, they are reduced to living in stairwells and makeshift tents behind the estate.
We went to the governor to demand that PUNG respects the contract and builds us homes. I asked for help, but instead the authorities used force against us. They held her up and hit her head on a car door. That's her in the picture. Then they just threw her into a truck.
I beg all the NGOs and institutions to help us because we're suffering a lot. We're homeless. We're living all over the place. It gets wet and muddy. We're suffering. Children fall sick and people don't make enough money to live. Please help. I'm still left here. Please help end our problems.
The developer ignored our requests for an interview. The recent global financial crisis has hit the industry hard. Prime property prices in the city are down 40% from their peak 4 years ago. The slowdown of foreign investment deepens the problems, says local real estate expert Song Bona.
They minimize the budget for investment, and also the compensation also minimize. The investor and developer, they need to spend a lot of money to settle the problem. They need to also gain the profit. Otherwise, if no people willing to do, if no people willing to invest, the country also cannot develop as well.
If the people cannot benefit from your development, you should not do it. Development for what? People heard the word development, it scared the hell out of them.
Cambodia is perceived as one of the world's most corrupt nations by NGO Transparency International. And Prime Minister Hun Sen is one of the longest serving political leaders in the world. A former Khmer Rouge commander, he has a fake left eye from a battle injury. Hun Sen later defected from the regime and helped Vietnam topple it, eventually becoming premier in 1985. An old saying goes, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. In Cambodia, many people are blinded by fear when development of the nation means destruction for them.